Happy Friday. Actually, you should say happy Good Friday for those who celebrate. End of Passover coming here. Welcome to the Wolff Den. I'm Matt Wolff, founder, CEO of Ticket Time Machine. The Wolff Den is presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his networking events at the in the club room. So check out winagainacademy.com. Today, we'd like to welcome Steve Shiffman to the Wolff Den. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Morning.
Morning
from the West Coast.
Yeah, West Coast. We're here, and it's amazing that we can what we can do with the Zoom and technology and all that stuff, which we'll get into a little bit. Steve is long time involved with Major League Baseball, but tell everybody who you are and a little bit about your background.
Sure. I appreciate the time today, Matt, and good morning to all out there. You know, I've been one of the most fortunate people, very blessed. I've been in the sports marketing team business for just about 40 years now. Hate to date myself, but I came into the business when Magic Johnson started playing for the Lakers, and that was my first job, was with the Los Angeles Lakers. 20 years old and didn't know much about anything, but I got a very lucky break where I got hired as an account executive and worked my way up the ladder. And for the last 26, 27 years, I've been involved in Major League Baseball. Back in the 90s with the Blue Jays. Then 1999 to 2004, the Angels, where I live here in Southern California. And from the Angels, I bounced up to be the vice president of the Dodgers for about 4.5, 5 years. And then when they imploded because of the divorce, I went to Kansas City Royals, where people used to tell me it was one of the worst teams in baseball, but I got to host an all-star game there, a very successful all-star game. And we won the American League pennant in 2014. And in 2015, we came back and won the World Series. Small payroll team, just shows you what they could do. And, I just spent the last 10 years there and tired of commuting back and forth. So now I'm just doing some consulting back here in Southern California.
Yeah, so I grew up a Royals fan, and it was because of Brett Saberhagen back in like 84, 85 maybe, I think, when I started. I have a very weird fandom. Like, I just picked these players, and then that was my team. So the Royals were my team for a long, long time. David Coe, Mark Gubiza, Quisenberry, then to go into Bo Jackson. I live in Florida now, so I'm a Marlins fan, but I still root for the Royals. I wish I had my Saberhagen shirt where we had to put Saberhagen in the half arc because the name didn't fit on there.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up, and who were you a fan of when you grew up?
I grew up in Far Rockaway, New York, Rockaway Beach, New York. And I grew up a Mets fan. And, we talk in baseball. It's funny. You get so many different perspectives on what makes a baseball fan. And it's really your first memory about baseball. And I love telling this story. My first memory was going to the 1969 World Series game with my dad. He got tickets for almost every home game that season. It was called the Amazing Mets. Gil Hodges was the manager with Tommy Agee, Bud Harrelson, Tom Seaver, Jerry Kuzman, Jerry Grody. I mean, when I think about it, it feels like yesterday, sitting in the stands.
Nolan Ryan on that team?
Yeah. Later on. And, but I think about that. And as I think about it right now, it just brings back fond memories because, I remember sitting on the first base side with my dad, a foul ball popped up there. And, in those days, the businessmen wore their suits. And he went to grab the foul ball. He fell. He ripped his suit. People jumped on top of him. Everyone for a $3, $4 ball in those days. But he ripped a $300 suit. And I remember, when I was fortunate to be in the World Series with the Angels in 2002, I flew my dad out here to California and took him to a game to reciprocate. And it was just, you think about your first memories in baseball. That's what baseball is all about. It's, if you're very fortunate and lucky that, in those days, everything was so affordable that your grandfather would take you to the game, especially on the East Coast, Sunday afternoon game, whatever it may be. And, you have a hot dog and a soft drink and you cheer on your team. And that's what baseball is all about. It's the American dream. It's the American pastime. It was all about sharing family values and times together at the ballpark.
Yeah, I remember going to I don't remember my first game, actually. I feel like it was a season opener for the Mets somewhere because it was easier to get to Shea than it was the Bronx, and Bronx was a little bit, and still might be a little bit rougher We actually went to Phillies games a lot because Philly was a very easy drive to get to the stadium. But I don't remember my first, but I do remember, going with my dad. Do you have anything from that first game that you went to?
Probably long gone. I remember everything I had. My parents, when we all moved away, it was 3 kids, and we all moved away. My parents sold the house, and I remember coming back one year to my parents' smaller place, and I said, "Hey, where's my chest of baseball cards and all my sporting equipment?" And my mom looks at me. She goes, "I told you to come get them before I got rid of everything." I must have had more baseball cards. Well, every kid, in those days had baseball cards. That dad would come back home with a newspaper and a bunch of baseball cards with a stick of bubble gum in it, and I had a whole chest full of baseball cards. It's funny because, like I said, today you don't realize the value of some of those cards, what they're worth. Who knows, what kind of cards I had in there. I don't remember, but I had everything. Kid growing up, on the street, we'd swap cards and all that stuff when you were 9, 11, 12 years old. So no, everything I had, I remember I see pictures of myself when I was after the World Series game in my Mets sweatshirt, the amazing Mets sweatshirt, when I was little. So, it brings back a lot of great memories. I wish I had stuff. If you look behind me, this is my office room where I have a collection of sporting goods stuff all over the place. I have behind you, which you can't see. I don't want to turn my computer around because I might lose you. But I have a paper that's when the Angels won the World Series finally with David Eckstein on the cover and the champagne. And behind me, I have a picture from 1927 of Babe Ruth. It's a newspaper framed over here that I bought many, many years ago. So I have all sorts of things from poster of the signed poster from the Lakers from 1982 to the Maple Leafs in 1992 when they signed a poster for me. I look around this room, and I did this for my son many years ago. He's off in college, my youngest one. But, I have all my little sporting stuff, as much as you can fit on the walls.
Yeah, that's I have so much stuff that's not even up yet. I got stuff in my office that is going to be put up, and I have a man cave that's in the process of being built, so I'll get some more stuff up. But just to touch on a couple of things you said, we had Randall Thompson from Dugout Mugs yesterday. Uh-huh. Have you heard of Dugout Mugs?
Yep. Great product.
Yeah, he was on yesterday, and we'll talk about this later, but he has David Eckstein on his Mount Rushmore, and David was the person he'd love to meet. Oh, no, not David. He has him on his Mount Rushmore. I'm a Gator, so I'm a big David Eckstein fan too. And then we're going to have Matthew Lee Rosen on the Wolff Den this month, and he does a lot of crazy stuff in the card gum. Like, I don't know if you wait till you see him. The stuff he does is incredible, and it's just the creativity of people with regards to fan art or collectibles or memorabilia is I love it. I'm all in on that stuff. I was all in on that stuff. That's kind of why I did what I did. But it's great to see that type of stuff on the wall. Have you ever heard of? Do you know Measure Up? The Measure Up posters back in the day. Yeah. My father was very good friends with this guy Wally, who was instrumental in that, and he gave us these. My brother still said he still had. I don't know if he's listening today. But he still has the Jordan, and I had a Magic Johnson, and these were like 6-foot posters hanging up in your on the wall. So it's just bring back a lot of memories. That's why we love memorabilia and all this stuff, and kind of you just say one thing or show me one thing, and I can tell you we could just start having this could go a whole different way, and talk hours about our stories and what that means to you. To me, is important to just be able to look at it and talk about it. And I'm sure we could do a show probably for everything you have in there. And
well, it's funny. You mentioned David Eckstein, and he's one of those few players that always sticks in my memory because he was such a nice guy. He was just, in college ball, you got to run out to the field and hustle out there. Major League Baseball, you don't see that as often, but David always ran on the field. He always jumped over the line, so he never touched the line. And I'll tell you an interesting story about him. I was out one time. I don't know what it was, but I was walking with him towards his car. And here's a Major League Baseball player. He's not making the high end, but he's made a couple of $1 million a year. He's driving an old Maxima. There was no stereo in the car. And I said to him, "What happened to your stereo?" He goes, "Oh, it got ripped off a couple of years ago." I said, "You haven't replaced it?" He goes, "I don't really. It doesn't bother me." And he was living in his friend's garage. down, close to the stadium because it was getting close to his workout facility. But very down to earth guy. You know what? Really didn't care about a lot of the things that you see players one driving fancy cars or whatever else. I mean, he had an old Maxima. Radio was stolen out of it. It looked like he was just a nice guy. I mean, you don't see that too often in the game.
No,
and
but
then, talking about.
Yeah,
talking
you hear
about
those stories about the guy who doesn't touch their paycheck, right? And lives modestly. Even Warren Buffett, right? I guess there's stories about Warren Buffett and eats at that diner every day.
Yeah. And then, you talk about other things, especially in your business, and I should probably get you some. I was cleaning some stuff the other day. I have all this old ticket stock, from the World Series in 2015 and dating back to stuff when I was with the Angels, some of the World Series stocks. And I know you're in the ticket business.
No, we'll have to talk about it. I'd love to take a look at that and maybe have some of it. Let's go back to Win Again Academy in the club room. You talk about David Exner. I haven't followed up on what he's doing, but a lot of these ex-Major League Baseball players are doing very, very well in business. And it's great to see that they can transition from playing to afterwards, because that's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of resources out there and help. And I've met a ton of people. We're going to have some of them on the Wolff Den too, ex-Major League players who are, they're really doing well, whether it's real estate or finance or they, coaching, really doing well for themselves, which it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. Even, just switching careers if you're not a major league player.
And you're absolutely right. I've been very fortunate for me. A lot of the guys, we call them on the Speakers Bureau, the guys that come back that played back in the 70s and the 80s. And there really wasn't those $1 million contracts back then. I mean, when you look back, and the funny story about, the Brooklyn Dodgers, my dad used to tell me these stories because he grew up in Brooklyn. These guys are just everyday guys. They weren't making big, they played for the love of the game. So you meet a lot of these guys, like, I was fortunate enough to meet, Jess, I'm drawing a blank, but Bobby Grich is a friend of mine here in Orange County. He was a second baseman for the Angels. I mean, you know what? He goes on the Speakers Bureau. He works for a title company. He still gets involved in, up to last year into spring training, going out and working with the young kids. But, they didn't make the big money that these kids are making today. So they really led normal lifestyles. They played really, truly for the love of the game.
Yeah, I love telling this story. My grandma grew up in Brooklyn and worked for some, I can't remember who, but some well-known, wealthier people back in that day. And she was at her boss's son's bar mitzvah, and she sees this guy there, and he's getting all this attention. And the next thing, I don't know, fast forward, she's like standing talking to him, I guess, and he's like, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And she goes, "No, should I?" And he goes, "Oh, well, that's good to hear. It was Jackie Robinson." And, he doesn't follow sports, wouldn't know him from anything. And it's just, he said it was a real pleasure to have a conversation with someone who doesn't know who he is. So, and you can't get away. I mean, obviously he's so recognizable and known, but these days everyone is, especially in baseball. That's the thing where it's like you see their face, baseball, basketball, not hidden. So that's a story I always like to tell.
I'll tell you a great story about Tommy Lasorda, and I'm very fortunate, and I miss him every day. And when I was with the Dodgers, he was like a dad to me. He was a true mentor. So Tommy and I, and we very rarely flew commercial, but we had to go somewhere. He asked me to come join him. We're at LAX, we're at TSA, and they go, "Hey, good morning, Mr. Lasorda, how are you?" And everyone's fussing around him and this and that. And we get up to the front, they go, "Oh, ID, please." And he goes, "Oh, I don't have my ID." And they go, "Oh, you need to have ID." And he goes, "Well, why do I need ID? You all know who I am." And he's going through this whole routine, and they call the supervisors over. The supervisors, "Oh, Mr. Lasorda, nice to see you, blah, blah, blah. What seems to be the problem?" He says, "You know who I am?" He goes, "Yeah, you're Mr. Lasorda." He goes, "Well, I don't have my ID, and they won't let me go through." So after about a 15-minute, fuss, they let Tommy go through. I show my ID. We get on the plane. Tommy opens his briefcase to grab something. I go, "Tommy, there's your wallet." He goes, "Oh, I know." I said, "Is your ID in there?" He goes, "Yeah, it's just a game I like to play."
That's pretty funny, especially with the whole Patrick Ewing thing that happened the other day. Although I could say getting on a plane is a little bit different than walking around Madison Square Garden. So
Yeah.
it's pretty good though. How did you get into ticketing? Obviously you started in marketing, but it's, your experience has been in ticketing. How did you get into ticketing? Did you fall into it? Is it something you identified that you wanted to do?
No, I always tell people I got into this business by a freak of nature. I moved out to California to go to UCLA. I went there for a semester, and I was working in a gas station right there in Brentwood, which is adjacent to Westwood. Beautiful area. And I got held up one night at knife point. And the guy on the station, he was from New York, and he goes, it's like 10 o'clock at night. He goes, hey, you're supposed to be a tough guy from New York. How do you let them hold you up? And I go, you pay me $3 an hour to work here. I appreciate it, but I don't need the headache. I'm done. I walk away and I go, boy, I got a problem now because here I am going to school. I got bills to pay and I have no job. So I had to think real quick what to do. I looked through the newspaper. I found an ad that said, do you like sports? At that time I was playing baseball. I was playing in the Culver City leagues. It was kind of an intramural sport, but it was also a paid, you paid to play in tournaments and you won money. So I just followed up on the ad. It was called California Sports. Didn't know anything about it. I remember going to the Salvation Army to pick up, a sports jacket, a pair of slacks, and shoes because I didn't really have money to go shopping in any major stores. And I go in my interview, probably my first real job interview in life at the age of 20, and I pull up to the Forum, the fabulous Forum in Inglewood, home of the Lakers and Kings, and I go, this must be a mistake. But I go downstairs. I had to meet a gentleman by the name of Lee Kessler, who ran the group sales department for the Forum. And after about an hour of meeting him and going back and forth, I didn't know what to think. And then like within 5-6 days, I got a letter from him because in those days we didn't have email. And he says, hey, congratulations, Steve. Welcome aboard, blah, blah, blah. And, to this day, think about it, 1980, 40 some odd years later, Lee and I are still very good friends. He lives in Australia. And because he was running the Sydney Entertainment Center for many years, he's retired now, of course. But, when he comes stateside, and he loves baseball, we'll go to games together, or he'll meet me in spring training, or he's stayed at my home. But, he was my first mentor in the business. He hired me. He taught me about group sales, which we used to call group service. He says, I'd love to change the name because we're not a sales department, we're a service department. And I spent 8 great years, at the Forum through many championships. In those days, unfortunately, I had to buy my ring. So I never got a ring for the Laker championships I've been involved in, but I have great memories. And then from there, I decided, the Lakers were selling off the Kings because at the time when I worked there, I had the Lakers, the LA Kings hockey team, the Lasers soccer team, and then I had it was an arena. So it was the busiest arena in the United States, the Forum. We had, I think, 270 events a year. So, I was always busy. I was 100% commission, and I started making a decent living for a 20-year-old kid over the next 8 years. And I built a great reputation in Los Angeles. And then when the Clippers moved into town, they needed to hire me as a director of sales. So I went over to the Clippers, and needless to say, it wasn't the greatest organization I ever worked for. So I spent a year there. And then that was when Sterling owned the team. Yeah. And I won't tell any bad stories. I'll just say it just wasn't the greatest experience. Yeah. And then from there, I had an opportunity to go to Toronto. Bruce McNall bought a Canadian football team. Bruce McNall was interesting. So when I left the Lakers to go to the Clippers, Bruce McNall that same year came in and bought the Kings. Right. And he said to me, and he was a nice guy. He says, why are you leaving? He says, this is a great – I said, I've tried to sell hockey in this town for 8 years. Unless you sign someone like Wayne Gretzky, it's hard to sell this team. And because every game we'd have 8,000-9,000 people at a Kings game. I mean, we had Marcel Dion and Bernie Nichols, and it was a good team, but it wasn't a hockey town, LA at the time. So I leave, and like 4 or 5 months later, he signs Wayne Gretzky. Everything explodes in LA. They change the colors. This whole new thing. They go to the Stanley Cup, even though they lose in 1992. But anyway, long story short, I stay in touch with him. And when he bought the team in Toronto with Wayne Gretzky and John Candy, he said, I'm going to give you another opportunity. He says, you saw what I was able to do here with the LA Kings. Do you believe in me? I go, yeah, I believe in you. And he says, well, I want you to go to Toronto and help run this team. And here I am, 28 years old, 29 years old. I go, where's Toronto? Because I had no even clue what Toronto was. I remember getting off the plane in January wearing just a light leather jacket going, oh, my God, this is the coldest place on earth I've ever been in January. And from there, I spent a couple of years there. Unfortunately, Bruce McDonald went to jail for fraud. John Candy passed away, and we were kind of in nowhere's land. And I had a great relationship with the Blue Jays because we shared the building. And then I became a Blue Jay employee, and it was all magic and baseball since then.
Yeah. How much was the ring to buy?
How much is a ring to buy?
Yeah, that you said you had to buy the championship ring.
Oh, I think in those days it was probably $1,500 to $2,000, but I didn't have that type of money. I was, I had an envelope to pay my rent. I used to tell this to my kids who take everything for granted. I mean, they don't take it for granted, but they don't realize that, here I am. My parents didn't take care of me. I left to come to California because I wanted to follow my dream. I love the beaches, and I love to surf, and I just wanted, have a whole different lifestyle. So I came out here on my own. You know what? I had to work, go to school. So when I got the job with the Lakers and Kings, I put an envelope in for money for rent, an envelope for a car, an envelope for beer. I mean, I had 3 envelopes: bill, and fun.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Yeah,
so I didn't have money for the rings. When the rings came available, I didn't have money for the rings in those days. I mean, obviously, when I got into baseball later on, rings were supplied.
They're like an investment. It
Yeah,
could have been like an investment for you.
True. You're absolutely right. But again, here I am in my 20s, and I don't have that type of money.
Things we wish we would have done back in the day. I mean, it's think about like you can't afford it, but man, if we would have done it, there would have been some good things. But live and learn, or that's just the way it was supposed to be.
There would have been another 5 extra rings for me.
Yeah. No, that's good. You have one with the Royals.
I have 2 from Toronto. I have 1 from the Angels, 2002. I have the American League Championship ring from 2014 when we won the championship, but we lost the World Series, and I have the World Series ring, so I have 5 rings.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're all sitting in a vault. I don't wear any. I don't even wear my wedding ring because it hurts my fingers. But I told my kids each of them could have a ring.
That's great. What are they worth, by the way? I mean, they kind of like these rings just get more and more expensive and extravagant because every time someone wins something, their owner wants to one up the last great thing that they saw, right?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in 2014 when we won the American League pennant, we all went out and the ownership, made this, beautiful ring for the team and the employees. So they really had to outdo themselves when we won the World Series in 2015. So it's really a beautiful ring. I mean, I think it's insured for $25,000, my ring, for the 2015 World Series. And really the value is what people are willing to pay for them. I mean, the actual value of them, I mean, it's gold, it's diamonds, it's rubies. I mean, so even my Angels ring, I think is at the time in 2002 is valued insured at $10,000. So think about it, from 2002, from $10,000, the same manufacturer, to 2015 to $25,000.
Yeah, it's getting out of control. It's wait until something like Jerry Jones wins something.
Oh yeah, well, football makes these just astronomical large rings. I mean, they're just oversized, and so I can only imagine what they're worth.
Probably not in my lifetime if he's still running the team, but that's for a different conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not a Cowboys fan, so that's not someone who's a Cowboys fan.
Neither am I.
Yeah, they're one of my most hated teams. I guess that's a good segue here. I have these teams that I really hate, and I don't have any allegiance to any teams, and I do business with them. Just if I don't root for them, I'm happy to help them. But who are you a fan of? I know we had this conversation, like you're always going to root in some way for the team that you've been on, but do you have the opportunity to really root it? I guess obviously internally, but be public about who you root for?
There's an unwritten law. I mean, I've actually lost employees because of the stupidity of it. But if you work for a team, I'll give you an example. When I was with the Dodgers, one of my guys comes in. We're playing interleague play against Boston. He's sitting there with a Boston jersey on and a Boston hat on. I look at him. I shake my head. I go walk up to him. I said, I won't use names. I said, "Hey, you enjoying yourself?" He goes, "Yeah, this is great. And he's with his buddies. I said, tell me, you big Boston fan? He goes, oh, I love the Red Sox. Love the Red Sox. My favorite team. I said, really? Do they pay you? He goes, huh? I said, do they pay you your salary? And he looks at me and goes, no. I said, do they pay for your health insurance? He goes, no. I said, let me tell you something. I said, you're lucky you're going to get fired on the spot. I'm going to give you a real good piece of advice. Maybe I should give it to you sooner. When you work for a team and the team pays you, you shouldn't be seen in any other team's colors. Now, listen, you want to wear a Celtic hat because it's Boston Celtics and wearing baseball? I could live with that. But if ownership sees you wearing something that's opposite of the team that pays you, it could be termination time for certain people. I mean,
that's like the Bud Light story, right? The Budweiser Bud Light story when you saw people ordering, they ordered like a Bud Light or something when they were working for Miller and they got fired.
Well, that happened to me. I was, when I was in Toronto, guess who owned the Blue Jays? It was Labatt's. So I'm at a party one night, and I'm drinking a Coors Light out of the can. And one of the executives comes over to me, was actually at the party. He goes, hey, Steve, put it in a cup. So I look at him, I go, like, what are you talking about? I go, huh? He goes, put the beer in the cup. I said, I don't mind drinking out of the can. He goes to me, that's not the point. Who owns you? So I thought right away, oh, geez, let me go get a Carlsbad or a Blue Light or a Blue. And he said, I don't care if you drink. He was funny. He goes, I don't care if you drink it. Just put it in a cup so other people don't see you drinking someone else's product. I mean, ironically, when I was in the Blue Jays, our refrigerators were full of Blue and Blue Light, Labatt product. And at 5 o'clock, you could drink away if you want. And most people sat around after the season was over, and they grab a beer in the lounge area and have a beer before they hit the road.
Well, the good thing is that neither one of those beers are any good, so you didn't have to worry about it.
The funny part, I love Molson, and they were the competitor.
I say that, that's when there are some people who like that stuff, and I'm like, look, when that's what you can afford, that's what you drink. But if you like beer and you can afford more, it's like, it's hard.
Toronto's only two colors, blue and Blue Light.
Yeah. No, I was in Toronto and with my family when the Sky Dome was being built, and we were in a hotel. I don't even remember a whole lot of it. I just remember being in a hotel, and my dad and I were in an elevator with George Michael because he was performing that weekend. So that's my memory of it. It's weird how my memories are like it's very vivid about that, but the rest of the experience, I couldn't even tell you what the heck we did or where we went. Haven't been back to Toronto, but I got to Montreal for a friend's bachelor party. So I'm a big fan of Canada. I look forward to going back.
Yeah, listen, as you know, I married a Canadian. All my kids are dual citizens, even though they're living in the States. And, Toronto is a great city. I always tell people you have a little bit of a European flair, a little bit more as you get into Quebec, like Montreal or Quebec City. I mean, and when you talk about bachelor parties, Montreal is one of the greatest cities to go party in.
Yeah, they love these guys. It was the guys I was with were it was nuts. It was Hangover. It was either The Hangover or Hangover 2. I think it was The Hangover 2 was coming out, and they're like, let's just take an impromptu trip to Bangkok. Meanwhile, I was unemployed at the time. The fact that I even went to this thing was like, and these guys are like, let's fly to Bangkok. I'm like, yeah, I'll stay here.
Well, the real fun is in an old town called Phuket in Thailand. Yeah. My wife and I were in Bangkok a couple years back, and we went down to a little beach town, and it was like Vegas on steroids. It was just crazy.
That's what I hear. It's one of the places I'd love to go. Let's talk about your family, because there's some interesting stuff about your family that I found out the other day. You celebrated a birthday, right? Yep. And you're telling me that your son, I know your son because we're connected on LinkedIn, had his birthday, and then your dad has the same exact birthday.
Yeah, we're a big March family. I mean, yeah, my dad, myself, and Matt are all March 20th. Wasn't planned that way, but we all had the same birthdays. And then it's interesting because Matt's wife is March 9th. My wife is March 1st. So Matt's wife is 11 days older than him, and my wife's 19 days older than me. So all March kids.
I mean, you couldn't even plan that if you wanted. Could you plan all March, baby? Sure, but the odds on that happening on the same day are, I don't know. I'm not a mathematician, but it's got to be pretty low. It's actually one of those. It's funny because we talked about. I don't know if I said this to you, but I wanted to try and do that like two truths and a lie game, and that would be a perfect one for you. If anyone ever asks you for the two truths and a lie, that is one that you could. That's one that you can use. Very interesting to see.
Yeah, I always felt like I got cheated on March 20th because my dad was oldest, it was all about him, and Matt being the youngest one, it was all about him. And me, I was just chopped liver. I was like the middle child syndrome on the birthdays.
Well, I assume you got to have some pretty big celebrations or stuff. What was something that really sticks out that the three of you might have done together on your birthday?
Boy, that's a tough one because, again, my dad really hasn't much trip. My dad passed away last year, almost the age of 92, but he really didn't do a lot of traveling the last, 10, 15 years. I mean, he just kind of stayed down in Florida. But Matt and I have done a lot of great things together. We went to the Final Four in Detroit back, it was close to 20 years ago, maybe. 15, 16 years ago, went to the Final Four. Matt and I have gone to a lot of sporting events. I mean, I've been very fortunate, being in the world of sports, especially every time I went to a World Series, where my wife and kids would always join me, and we'd always go to the visiting city, whether it was New York or San Francisco in those days. And then obviously the Blue Jays, I just remember that was a crazy time, during their World Series times, but the kids were real little then.
Yeah. Not so interesting fact is that my brother and I share the same birthday, but that's because we're twins. and not identical. So it's like, your fraternal twins is cool, but it's like, it's not the same as being identical in the sense of how interested people are to talk about you being a twin. But yeah.
Well, my daughter's married to an identical twin, and a lot of times I have to shake my head unless they have two separate types of haircuts. It's hard to tell the difference.
Is it this still as they get older? It's still like hard to tell. Interesting.
Yeah, I could tell when they start talking because their personalities are different. But when you look at them, if they both have the same haircut, they are identical.
Yeah, that's pretty wild to. You don't see that often. I see a lot of identical twins as you're growing up, and then something happens, and who knows? It could even be someone's 5 pounds heavier than the other one, and it's easier. You can tell them, or facial hair.
Yeah, no, these two guys. I mean, I laugh sometimes when I'm down there. They're down in Austin, Texas. So when I get down there so often, and we're all out together, I kind of look at one, I look at the other, I just shake my head, just going, "Boy, what a trick you could play on each other."
Yeah. I love Austin too. That's one of my favorites. Do you have a favorite? I mean, you probably travel a lot with the baseball. Do you have a favorite baseball city that was not someone you worked for?
Yeah, listen, I love more of the historical stuff. I mean, I love San Francisco because it's a new stadium. It's on the pier. But going to Chicago to Wrigley, going to Boston, and going to the old Yankee Stadium. When every year I traveled. To a different city to see a different team. Part of the beauty of working in baseball, and especially in my position, I would take clients on trips. So I never missed spring training. This is my first spring training I've missed in 27, 25, 26 years, whatever it may be. But, every year I take a trip and listen, I've been down to the Marlins Stadium, which, is okay. It's fun, but it's nice when you stay at the Ritz on Biscayne Bay. But there's nothing like going to Boston. There's nothing like going to Wrigley. I mean, it's just the historical stuff when you think about the history that's behind that. And I've been fortunate enough to take behind the scene tours, and going to Fenway is just an amazing place, and Yawkey Way, and how they do things and how they develop things and how they they didn't modernize it, but they made it more revenue or fan friendly. But it's just, the history. When you walk on the steps that Ted Williams walked on or something like that in the dugouts, look at the field, look at the Green Monster. I mean, I just love those venues. It just, I miss Yankee Stadium because, it's funny. Like you, I didn't go to a lot of Yankee games because, I was a Queens boy and the Mets were the Queens team, when you live in Queens, New York. But I've been to quite a few Yankee games over the years and always enjoyed old Yankee Stadium. And I've been to the new stadium. It's beautiful, but there's something about the historical aspect of, the house that Ruth built and all that.
Yeah. Did you go to the bar in the Green Monster bar?
Oh yeah. I sat at the Green Monster. I might have been 4 years ago. My wife joined me, and my youngest one joined me because he always wanted to go. And we took the duck tour and went on the water and did all the fun things and walked the path. I mean, Boston's a great city in the summertime. Just a great city.
Yeah, we have a trip that we take every year called Sports Weekend, and they're actually we're planning on having them on the Wolff Den for my 50th episode, and we go to Major League Baseball Friday, college football Saturday, and pro football Sunday. And last year was supposed to be our 20th year, and it got canceled. So we're definitely going to do something this year. We got to wait for the NFL schedule. We're kind of in limbo what we'll do, but we'll do something to get together because a lot of it's just about us getting together. We're all over the country: Chicago, Arizona, New York, Florida, and DC. And baseball, to me, is really the best fan experience out of any of that. And you go to the different stadiums, and you can tell the difference. There's difference between a really good stadium and just an okay stadium, and then there's experience in that. So, we sit down, and then we go walk around the whole thing and grab something to eat and grab a beer and throw baseball and get our pitches timed. And so for me, baseball is I can go to Citi Field, and it's a much better experience than Yankee Stadium, although Yankee Stadium has the history, as you say. But I could stand in the outfield at Citi Field and walk around, and there's some cool stuff. So that's one of the things that we love about baseball, and it's also the first day we get there generally, so have a little bit more energy. But I mean, we had some great. It's just a lot. It's a great thing to go with a group. You sit at football, you're like sitting at the football game. You go to an NFL game, you're not. You don't want to miss anything. You're not walking around unless you're going to the bathroom getting something to eat. So baseball's kind of unique in that situation.
Yep, and another ballpark I completely forgot about that I always loved was Camden Yards. When you talk about that feel when you're coming close to Camden Yards, you could smell the baseball. I mean, they got the roasted nuts outside. I mean, it's all old school. Another great venue.
Camden Yards is very
football's about the tailgating. I mean, you do your partying 4 or 5 hours.
Well, that's the thing. So,
pardon me?
Camden Yards is very unassuming. It's not normally you'd come up to a ballpark.
I was going to say,
that's a ballpark. I think did we lose your audio? I think we lost your audio for a little bit.
Yeah. Now, Camden Yards was a fun experience too. I mean, they got the ferry that goes around. Yeah, no, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, can you hear me now? Testing.
Yes,
Testing.
Now I hear you. It was going in and out.
Hello. I hear you.
You're back.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Let's see what's going on.
Yeah. So, I was saying Camden Yards is very unassuming where you're like, generally you drive up to a ballpark.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine here on my end. I hear you. Can you see me and hear me?
I can. A little bit of a delay. It sounds like there's a delay.
Right.
Hold on. Let's put you out and then putting you back in.
But I was going to say, Camden Yards is a great experience. It's the smell. It's the feeling.
So now you're doing some consulting. That's
new now.
Mostly in the ticketing world, right? Consulting in the ticketing world.
Yep. I can you hear me?
I hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I do.
Testing.
Yeah, there's a delay, and then I can't hear you.
Yep. Yes, that's what I'm doing. Yep, doing some consulting for a third-party broker ticket technology company.
but you're looking to go back maybe to a team in the ticketing world.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right, there you go. So yeah, I'm doing some consult. Yeah, I'm doing some consulting right now. Trying to help teams utilize the technology that brokers utilize. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure how to change that. My connection is good. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you. Feels like a little bit of delay. I don't know why.
No, you know what? There's opportunities out there. I don't want to travel. I spent the last 10 years commuting back and forth from Kansas City. It's exhausting. You know, I'm happy to be back in California, back with my wife. I mean, my lifestyle for the last 10 years was crazy. I mean, I be in Kansas City every other week. I would come home. I'd leave on a Thursday night, you know, and then I would go back on a Sunday night, which is like a red eye. Get back at 2, 3 in the morning and start my day. And you know what? After the pandemic happened, I'm just as happy being home, doing smaller stuff. I miss. It's my first opening day I missed in so many years. It's hard to believe when opening day happened yesterday that I wasn't in baseball, but I accepted, and I'm keeping my yep, and I'm keeping my self close to the sports world by contacting teams. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll talk slowly. Maybe that will help. But no, I'm still doing some consulting for ticket technology companies to help teams raise additional revenues.
Okay. What's been the biggest change in
Can you
the
still hear
ticketing?
me?
Yeah. What's been the biggest change in
Can
the
you
ticketing world
hear
from when
me?
you started to now? Because
Let's see
obviously
if
things are digital.
maybe I'll pick you up on my other computer. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, but I think I think I'm answering a question from
Oh
like
no,
5 minutes ago because I think there's a little bit of a delay. Technology. This is
Matt, can you hear me?
the good and bad of technology. I can hear you.
Now, can you hear me on my phone better?
Yeah, I think so. The good and bad of technology. You kept asking me if I could hear you. Well, let's kick you out of the other one.
Yeah, I just closed that one up so make it easier on this one. But what I was going to say is that the last question you asked me is what I'm doing now, and I'm doing some consulting for a ticket technology company. What they do is most brokers sell their tickets on their platform. They have the opportunity to sell one ticket on multiple different sites in lifetime. So this way, you have the best exposure. If I'm the Royals and I want to sell Royals tickets on StubHub and Vivid Seats and SeatGeek and a variety of, like, say, 15 different sites, because what happens today is that it's almost impossible to have search engine optimization when you're a team. It's as if you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and Yankees do spend a lot of money to have that, but not every team is as fortunate as the Yankees. So what happens is if you go on your phone, you go, oh, I want to go to a Royals game or a Mets game tonight. Usually the first 5 or 6 sites that pop up are not the official site of the team. It's usually brokers, third parties. So what the company I work with, the technology company, they created many years ago, one of the first to create this platform where you can put that ticket on multiple sites lifetime. And if it sells on one site, it comes down all the sites in lifetime. So it gives you the opportunity to really max out your revenues. So what I'm trying to do now is tell teams, don't deal with the brokers who are making all the money off your tickets. Let's help keep the profitability within your own marketplace by using this software. And, the organization I'm working for has the staff and people to be able to handle it and help sell your tickets across the board. Because at the end of the day, and Ticketmaster did this many years ago. They created a secondary marketplace. So if you want to sell your tickets on the primary or secondary on Ticketmaster, you can. It's one entity that's able to offer you two options. No different than Major League Baseball being involved with StubHub. But StubHub doesn't own the marketplace as much as some of the other teams do, depending on what market you're in. So this allows you to sell your ticket on every site in live time, which, every team would want to do. I mean, they want to sell tickets at the end of the day and keep the money inside their own pockets.
Yeah. It was funny because you kept asking me if I could hear you, and I was saying yes, but I think I was answering a question from like 5 minutes ago because there was a delay. But we're back now. Talk about the difference in ticketing from when you first started to today. What do you really like? What's made your job easier? What made it harder? And maybe where do you think they missed?
That is a pretty deep question. But, when I started in the business, I had a phone book, I had a telephone, and I had a fax machine, up to most recently. So there was no technology back then. You actually used to deliver your tickets, you mail them. Today, technology is great. Obviously, you have computers, and obviously you sometimes have hiccups like we just did, on the show because you can't hear me, I'm delayed. But, some of the newest technologies, everything's digital today. And, some people have a hard time adjusting to digital tickets because you have to download the app, whether it's baseball, the MLB app, or it's football, the NFL app. But at the end of the day, you download the app. If you can't make the game and you want to send it last minute to a friend of yours who can make it, you could do that. But where it saves us from a team standpoint is, number one, every team probably spends thousands of dollars mailing, packaging, and sending out tickets. And then every team has to deal with people who don't receive their tickets and then go through a search where your tickets end up. And you don't want to reprint them until you know that they're actually missing or that you find them somewhere, or then it becomes fraudulent tickets because those tickets are out there in the marketplace that went somewhere or were stolen. Digital tickets kind of, solves all those problems. It eliminates the opportunity of lost tickets, stolen tickets. It's a barcode that stays with you. So, I mean, that is the perfection of digital tickets. The problem, though, especially in baseball, we have an older generation. People that follow baseball, the general age, I was just reading an article the other day where our average age is 54. People follow baseball. So really, the more older people, and I don't ever want to stereotype anybody, but some people are a lot more tech savvy than other people, have a hard time with, digital tickets. They just don't want to do it. I mean, I can't tell you, we probably had at the Royals probably 3 to 5% of our accounts that just did not want digital tickets. And it was usually the older crowd, and they don't want to have to deal with it, or they get frustrated with it. So we print their tickets. We charge them a small fee to print their tickets, and we did it. Because at the end of the day, you got to accommodate your customers. There are certain teams out there that won't do that.
Yeah.
They'll just say, sorry, don't buy our tickets if you don't want to follow our rules.
I always hated digital tickets for many reasons. I hate being on my phone and having I like having a ticket and being able to like hold the ticket and go. But look, I understand why they're doing it. It saves them money and they can track your data. I come from a anti-money laundering and fraud background. So I can tell you that they will figure out how to fraud and manipulate the digital ticketing market. People already have. I've talked to teams that already have that issue. So I wouldn't, it's hard to pin it on the fraud aspect, although I do think it all helps. But I like to have something in my hand, and that's why Ticket Time Machine exists. We want to say, look, if you want a printed ticket, then you should be able to get one. And like you said, you'll pay for it. Yep. They don't have to give them to you anymore, but you have to pay for it. So that's what we're fighting against. People collect tickets.
Yeah, I was going to say, when digital first came out, they allowed you to do PDFs, but that became a nightmare because there was more fraud on PDFs. Think about how many times you make a copy of a ticket.
Yeah. And I keep them. I have a whole box full of print at homes, but they're terrible. But that's all, if that's all I can have, I'm gonna kind of get it. What what would you like to see in ticketing that might be more helpful?
That's a tough question again, because as the technology evolves, things keep changing. Like you were talking about before the show started, how you could upgrade your seats now, on a mobile app, which or you could sell your seats. So you were telling me that one of your friends does, if you want to leave early or whatever else. What would I like to see?
Yeah, that's Josh Ludwig, Love Seats. He was on the program. Always like to plug our guests.
Yeah, and again, send me his information. Love to catch up and see what he's actually doing, because I always love learning about different things. I mean, every day you read about something new and different that's happening on technology wise. I mean, like I said, when I got involved with this ticket technology company, I kind of understood the format, what they're doing, and if you're really good at what you do. And I have another friend of mine owns a company called TixTrax, which is a platform for selling tickets, and he's continuously taking his company and improving it with the technology. I mean, they just have,
They
people.
do a good job. I remember I had some customer service issues with my ticket wasn't working, and they ended up giving me like floor seats, general admission floor seats. TickTrax is maybe that's TickPick. I'm trying to remember. I keep getting them all. We got one boy, Ken. Ken is the 5 o'clock happy hour guy. He knows John well, so he says hello.
Oh, very good. Yeah, well, TixTrax is a company a buddy of mine, Michael Arias, started many years ago. Actually, we worked together at the Clippers. He was with Teambo, which is the marketing company for the NBA, and he just realized that ticketing wasn't being done properly. So he took money out of his account. Oh, I don't know, maybe it was 20 years ago, and started developing this company, and he's really built it up. I mean, now they do time. What's great during the pandemic, they created a time entry system.
Oh, okay. TickTrack.
TixTrack, yeah, so you could space.
Yeah, my friend Brett Cook just signed on he's been there for about a year or so now from IMG Tickets. Now I know who you're talking about. The time entry.
Yeah, and they do a lot of stuff. They're big overseas, and that's where they really focus. And it's hard to compete in this marketplace with Ticketmaster that's owned by Live Nation. I mean, baseball, and we were on Ticketmasters, we bought a company called Tickets.com because we wanted to control all our ticketing. Because I remember when it first started, Ticketmaster would say, "Oh, if we sell a ticket on our platform, that's our customer," and we'd say, "Wait a second." They're buying a ticket to our event, so it's our customer. So that creates a lawsuit, because who owns the customer? If you're selling a ticket on a platform that you don't own, whose customer is it? So baseball went out and said, all right, we're going to go get our own ticketing system. And, at one time, I think 20 out of 30 teams were on the ticketing system for tickets.com. Now a lot of teams are going back to Ticketmaster. I mean, Ticketmaster does a great job. I mean, tickets.com does too. But you have a lot more technology involved with Ticketmaster, which is owned by Live Nation. That puts a lot more money and resources into technology, because you want to constantly improve and be better at what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm surprised there isn't more competition, but there's, again, that's for a whole nother conversation. Maybe a day when the fan isn't anyone's customer and they can kind of just be free. But I understand the value of it, and that's what everyone's trying to figure out. Who's your customer, and what do they want? The thing that I don't like is I think that the teams and the leagues don't do as much to enhance the fan experience and actually what the fan would want, unless it's something that they can sell to them and be like, okay, well, we're gonna, they're trying to track your data and your purchase movements and all of that stuff. And I get it, it's a business. But as a fan, I'd like to have someone who, there's not a lot of teams that I think are treating the fans the way, and I think they're going to need to, because especially coming back, it's going to be a tough sell for some of these teams.
And I agree with you. I'll tell you what, Disney does a great job in taking care of their people and how they do things. But let me go back. One thing that I don't like about all the technology is what the consumer has to pay for it. So when you buy tickets somewhere, your fees are astronomical. As a consumer, when you start looking at the fees think about it, they're charging you for delivering a ticket via email.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, you could buy a $20 ticket, and half the price you could pay an additional $10 on that $20 ticket in fees. So I think the fees are outrageous. I mean, again, being on the team side, we share the percentage of technology, whether it's Ticketmaster or Tickets.com or StubHub. that's where they make the money, and their fees are rather steep, and they keep getting steeper. I mean, I fought with the ticketing companies for years from the team side. When we want to do a cheap ticket, like a $5 ticket, for whatever it may be, I don't want to have someone paying $2.50, $3 in fees. That's more than 50% of the ticket prices and fees. So that's one that they really need to change is how their fee structures.
It's just greed. I mean, we have partnerships with software companies that charge $1 for for their fee, and they make a ton of money. It's all in volume, right? I mean, think about it. You could charge $1 in a college football game. You just made $90,000 on fees.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact of whatever it is, all the other stuff you're getting. So, yeah, that's something that needs to change. But it's got to be someone who's willing to take the risk and kind of disrupt the industry. Tell us who's your baseball Mount Rushmore. It could be the 4 favorite or 4 best ever. What's your?
You talking about players, athletes, or teams?
Yeah, players.
Boy, that's a tough one. I've been very fortunate, in teams I've been with and people I've met over the years. And I mean, I talked about Lasorda, earlier in the show, and Tommy was really a true mentor to me and a great friend. And he always had great stories. And one time my wife, who's a director of admissions for a college here, locally in California, she needed a commencement speaker. A person canceled out last minute. So I said, you know what? I'll ask Tommy. Tommy's a great storyteller. You know what? He's up there for over an hour, and I got to go like this. All right, Tommy, cut it. I mean, and people are laughing hysterically, and he's just, so when you could sit around, and I one night we were in Vegas, the baseball meetings were there, and it was out to dinner with him, Mike Soch. His name is a good friend player. 2 other guys. You just want to be a fly on the wall, listen to the stories and laughing, and how much fun they've had. I mean, like I said, Tom Lasorda could keep you entertained for 24/7. I mean, he just had great stories and just a brilliant guy and a good friend and a mentor. So I've always been proud and honored to be associated with him, not just with the Dodgers but as a friend.
That's awesome to have something like that. You obviously been fortunate to go to a lot of events. Do you have a bucket list that you haven't been to for a sporting event?
I actually, the one thing I want to go to is the Kentucky Derby. And every year I plan it, something comes up, and every year for the last several years it poured and rained on it. So I'm glad that it didn't work out. And I was telling my wife, because that's something she wants to do. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been to Super Bowls. Actually, I took my youngest one to the 50th Super Bowl in San Francisco a few years back, and I was going to fly down when the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl in Miami, because my cousin had an extra ticket in Miami, and I was just like, do I really need to go down there? I mean, when you're in the world of sports, when you work in sports, you do it for other people. I don't do it myself. I've been to Final Four. I've been to Stanley Cups. I've been to, basketball championships. And obviously I've been to World Series. I've been to All-Star games. Like I said, I feel really blessed to have where I've had. I've traveled on the team charter with the players and stuff like that. I mean, I've done some amazing things. And ironically, here's baseball season. And I told my wife, I'm not sure if I have a desire to go to a game. I'll flip on the TV set. I said, I spent the last 27 years in a ball.
It's good to have a break and be on the outside and look at it from a different point of view.
This is my first free summer. I've never had a free summer.
Well, it's good. Hopefully you'll get to enjoy it with some travel and maybe some interesting trips or games of other sports, and who knows, relaxation. We get you out of here on the last question we always ask people, our guests. You can spend 24 hours with one person. They have to be living, and you can't be related to them. Who are you picking, and what are you guys going to do?
They can't be living? They have to be
They have to be living.
Oh, they have to.
We're going to make this happen for one of our guests. So they have to be alive.
Okay. Boy, I was going to if it was someone who was gone, I'd say Kobe Bryant, because I always wanted to meet a man like him. He was such a great inspiration. Person I meet that's, I'm so fascinated with politics today. And, on both sides of the track, that I'd love to have an hour with President Biden.
Okay.
Just to understand.
Well, you get 24 hours. So what would you do with Biden? Because that's our third president who's been third president to mention. We had someone with Trump, we had Obama, and now we got Biden. What would you like to do with Biden?
I would just love to, just shadow him around for a day and see what his days consist of and what he does and what's involved and some of the things that, when you hear the news and you hear the name calling and when you hear all the things going on in this world, I love to see a presidential opinion on how it's handled from that status.
Yeah, not PC, just, hey, I can say whatever I want. You're going to find out the real deal.
I mean, he's one of the world's greatest leaders, and he's our president. And I just love to have an opinion on what he thinks about, obviously he gives his opinion to things, but really just a one-on-one where there's no cameras and he doesn't have to say what he has to say. But really, how do you feel about what took place with the shootings that took place in the United States in the last 3 weeks? What about what's going on the border? What about the poverty? There's just so many things that, I think make this country great. And there's so many things that really, and I always tell people this, we live in the greatest country in the world. We have our issues and problems, but we live in the greatest country in the world. But here's the greatest world leader. I'd love to get in a room with him and shadow him for 24 hours and be able to ask certain questions.
Yeah. Is there something about him as opposed to any of the other living presidents?
No, he's just today's president. I might have a hard time with Trump because I sometimes, when Trump would speak, and I don't want to make anything in politics on this show, it's just he would say stuff or tweet stuff that I would just shake my head out. But
we're on the same page.
Yeah, but I think it would be any president just to be able to shadow a president for a day. I think Obama would have been, just genius because he was such a brilliant man.
Yeah, Obama is my pick.
Yep.
I go between him and Jason Bateman, who's my favorite actor.
Gotcha.
It would be one of those two. But we got Biden on the list for you. We're going to make it happen for someone. Really great to talk to you. We could talk hours and hours about all kinds of ticketing and sports and all this stuff. But tell everyone, how they can get in touch with you or what you're kind of looking for these days.
Sure. Listen, I have a website, leadingedgesportsconsulting.com, or my email is steve.shifty, which is my nickname, SHIFTY @gmail.com. And I'm listed in the phone book and I'm on LinkedIn. So, if anyone, wants to talk, needs help, has any information or whatever, always happy to help. I love talking to young kids and especially those who want to get to the sports world. I spent most of my career always talking to the local universities, sports marketing programs. Obviously, when I was in Kansas, the KU program, and I always enjoyed trying to help and guide people and help them with a great career that I was very fortunate to experience.
Well, appreciate the time here. Good to talk to you. It's been good chatting with you, trying to see where you're going next. Wherever it is, I can tell it's going to be very fruitful, and they'll be lucky to have you. Some great experience and. Appreciate your time here. Have a great weekend. Again, happy Good Friday to everyone. Happy end of Passover. Have a great weekend. We got some great guests coming next week, so stay tuned. And thanks for tuning in to the Wolff Den.
Thanks, Matt, for the opportunity. All my best.